Hello, Velinggrad. All honor and praise to that most estimable older member of our great fraternal order, the Brotherhood of Basses. I'm Ерик Halfvarson. I'm an American bass singer and a great, great admirer of Nikolai Gyaurov. There's no particular reason you may know who I am unless you attend a lot of Wagnerian operas in places like Vienna or London and New York. But I want to make it clear, I make no comparison to Nikolai Gyaurov except to say that he was like 10 of me put together. But with inspiration from him, I've now been on the professional opera stage for 48 years. I've sung 139 different characters in 7 languages. And I can tell you that in some way, I owe it all to Nikolai Gyaurov. And when my friends Malena Balinova and Peter Reichel told me of this evening's event, I wished so much to be somehow a small part of it. But in fact, on September 13th of this year, it's the opening performance of Prokofiev's opera War and Peace in the Grand Théâtre of Genève. So I may be on the stage even as you are listening to this. So I hope you will indulge me this crude video made in my hotel room in Genève as an absent but enthusiastic participant. And I want to express something of how important and influential Gyaurov was to me as a young singer. His recordings were absolutely sensational, almost overwhelming to me as I started out in the university in 1970. The soaring, majestic power of his voice and the smooth, natural, and easy-sounding technique were very important to my entire concept of sound. Naturally, no singer should imitate other singers or their recordings, and I give careful warning about that to all of my young students, but nevertheless, all young singers do it anyway. But in my case, I was so lucky that Gyaurov's recordings were an expression of an ideal technique that was excellent to my young ears. His voice seemed to easily fill an acoustic space with a kind of overwhelming, wide tsunami wave of warm, easy sound. And this was in contrast to some other examples of singers who seemed to work very hard in a tight, constrained, muscular, narrow focus of sound, evidently pushing through their nose with much less attractive effect. So my ideal, as I tell my students, is to make more sound for a longer time with less effort. And as my specialties seem to be in the German repertoire with parts like Hagen and Gurnemans and Baron Ochs, I believe I've been somewhat successful.
So did you ever meet Nikolai Gyaurov personally?
I only ever met Gyaurov once in the early 1970s. Fortunately, the University of Illinois is not very far south of Chicago, and several of us used to arrange our schedules of classes so that we would be free on Friday afternoons to drive up and hear the opera in Chicago, the Lyric Opera of Chicago. And so from 1970 to 1976, I heard about everything that they played, and Gyaurov sang in several of them. So it was after a particularly spectacular performance of the Massenet opera Don Quixote. A friend of mine who was in the Young Artist program up there and singing in the chorus invited me to come backstage and try to meet Gyaurov. I was quite nervous about it, but we managed to go through the hectic area backstage and found the right dressing room, and I timidly knocked on the door. And Gyaurov was there close to the door, and it opened, and he had his hands covered with cream, and he was wiping the makeup off of his face. He had a lot of makeup on. And I stammered something about how, well, we admired him so much because we're also young basses. And he just kind of chuckled and said, "Ha ha, bambini bassi." And I kind of stupidly put my hand forward as though to shake his hand, but he had all that cream on his hand, so he raised his elbow. So I shook Nikolai Gyaurov's elbow.
What a great story. And that was your only encounter with him?
Well, I had one other sort of amusing anecdote. Along about 1981, I was singing Colline in La Bohème with the Houston Grand Opera, and the biggest star of the cast really was Miss Mirella Freni. And there was a staging rehearsal in a huge room down in the bottom of the building, full of people. And I was just at the moment of starting Colline's famous coat aria. And as I took the breath to begin, the door opened and Nikolai Gyaurov walked in. And I was absolutely struck dumb and instantly made the decision to mark my performance down an octave. And I mumbled down something, Vecchiazzi Mara Senti. I'll never forget it. It was quite an embarrassing moment for me. I was totally starstruck by the great god of basses, Nikolai Gyaurov.
Thank you so much, Eric. It's a pity that you can't be here with us tonight, but hopefully you'll be here next year. Ladies and gentlemen, Ерик Халфарсон.